Hey guys, this week we're talking about a word that's a lot more fun to say than it is. Demurrage. We're going to be talking about demurrage, detention, and other things you need to be aware of when importing. So guys, what is demurrage? Demurrage is the storage cost once you've exhausted free time at the port. So free time is an amount of time that is given to you by, the port once you bring your container in the port. So usually this is 5 to 10 days, with a lot of traffic as that's been increasing. Ports have been cutting this down significantly, and now they're almost all 5 days. So this is the time when once your container enters port, they're giving you some time to get through customs, get all your paperwork in line, get a truck out there to the port, and get this thing picked up. And you're going to want to go get your container picked up there as quick as you can because you might run into a thing called demurrage. And demurrage is storage costs at the port. Demurrage is a lot like taxes, right? Over time, they graduate. So if your stuff is in the port for a day or 2 or 3, you'll pay one rate. But if it's there, 3 to 5 to 6 days, you'll pay another rate. And if it's there longer than a week, you might pay a different rate. So usually the fee schedule is graduated based on how many days it's been there. So you'll pay a lot less for your first day of demurrage than you will for your 10th day of demurrage. So it's really important to make sure, if you're going to incur demurrage, if there's something going wrong with that paperwork, if, customs and imports have your stuff held up, if your carrier isn't getting there on time, you want to really minimize the amount of time you're spent with demurrage because it is expensive and it is costly. So, like I said, right now, we're looking at about $200 a day for demurrage on a 40-foot container, and that's quite a lot of money, not to mention the fact that, those goods are outstanding. They're not in your warehouse. So, it's important to minimize demurrage because it's expensive. So, not only can you run into demurrage when importing, but you can also run into something called detention. So, detention is usually when you are using somebody else's property or equipment for longer than the designated time. So a lot of times when you're dealing with containers, somebody might drop off a container, it's full, expect you to unload it in a given amount of time so they can return that container to the port, in a reasonable amount of time. If you hold up that carrier and you hold up that container, you're going to incur charges known as detention charges. And this is, what happens when you go over the allotted amount of time that you have to unload that container. You can also do what is known as a live load. And that means that truck driver is going to sit there with that container, and you might have 2 to 4 hours, depending on the carrier, to get that container fully unloaded and send that truck back to the port. So there's a lot of different ways, and it really depends on the terms you have with your carriers who are performing that dryage from the port to, your warehouse or your facility. So it's important to know that, you may incur detention costs, especially if you're running over the allotted amount of time. So basically the difference between, demurrage and detention is demurrage happens at the port once you've exceeded your amount of free days, and it is more of a storage fee, right? You can think of it a lot like taking up a shelf in a warehouse as a storage fee. And detention is what happens when you're using somebody's equipment or resources longer than the allotted amount of time. And you can think of that a lot of ways as if you didn't return your DVD on time to the, DVD store back when that was a thing. So, both of these things are avoidable if you use the right amount of planning. You make sure all your paperwork's in line. You make sure that you have staff lined up to deal with these kind of shipments. And, they're definitely pretty hefty fees, especially in this time as, we see global shipping rates increasing and ports seeing massive amounts of congestion. So guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. As you see, we just passed 1,600 and we need your help to get to 2,000. So I'm counting on all you guys out there to give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a share. Help us get to 2,000 and be part of that journey. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.